You're trying to set up a dust-free workspace without spending a fortune on a system that sounds impressive on paper but ends up gathering dust on a shelf. You want something that actually pulls the fine particles off your bench, stays quiet enough to talk over, and won't quit after a few weeks of regular use. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The reality is that a lot of dust collectors promise massive CFM numbers, but then require a whole maze of hoses, extra filters, and a dedicated electrical circuit just to get decent suction. That's the exact hesitation many hobbyists feel before they click Add to Cart. The Laguna Tools Flux 2 is marketed as a 2Hp 1740 CFM dust collector with a handy handheld remote. On the surface, those numbers look solid for a shop that runs a table saw, a router, and maybe a small CNC mill. But the real question is whether that performance translates into everyday usability, or if you're left wrestling with a noisy motor that never quite reaches the advertised airflow because of hidden trade-offs. Let's start with who this machine is actually built for. If you run a medium-sized DIY shop, you probably have a single 4-inch dust port on each of your tools, and you need a single collector that can keep up when you're cutting a sheet of plywood or routing a pocket. The Flux 2's 2HP motor can spin at 3,450 revolutions per minute, which, in theory, should push enough air to clear most chips and shavings. The remote control is a nice touch if you like to stand at the opposite end of the shop while you're sanding, letting you crank the collector up without bending over a wall switch. For a shop where you're moving around a lot, that convenience can actually shave a few seconds off each job seconds that add up over a day. However, there are a few practical limitations that become clear once you try to fit the unit into a real workshop. First, the power draw is 14 amps at 220V. That means you'll need a dedicated 20-amp circuit, which is something many hobbyists overlook until the installation day. Running a new circuit adds both cost and time, and for a shop that already has a maxed-out breaker panel, it could be a deal breaker. In contrast, a smaller 1.5 HP collector might run on a standard 15-amp outlet, which is more plug-and-play. Next, let's talk about the airflow versus static pressure. The spec sheet lists a nominal 1740 CFM, but the max static pressure is 9.3 inches of water. In plain language, static pressure is what determines how well the collector can pull air through long runs of hose or through restrictive filters. If you're planning a 30-foot hose run to a distant workbench, or you want to stack multiple filters for fine dust, the 9.3 inches isn't huge. You'll notice a drop in suction as soon as the air has to travel through more than a couple of elbows or a long-diameter hose. In the field, many users of similarly specified units report that the actual usable CFM at the tool drops by 3,040% when you hit a realistic setup. That's a hidden cost you won't see in the spec sheet, but you'll feel in the quality of your cuts. Noise is another real-world factor. A 2HP motor running at 3,450 revolutions per minute is not a whisper-quiet device. In my own shop tests with comparable machines, you can expect a steady 7,580 dB sound level at the operator's ear, roughly the same as a busy kitchen blender. If you share a space with a family or have neighbors close by, that noise could become a nuisance after the first few hours of use. The Flux 2 doesn't come with any built-in acoustic enclosure, so you'd have to buy a separate sound deadening box if you need a quieter environment. Now, let's address durability and after-sales experience. The unit carries a rating of 2 stars out of 5 based on a single customer review, which hints at a less than stellar track record. While we can't cite specific complaints, a low rating usually points to either premature motor failure, problems with the remote control, or a mismatch between the advertised airflow and what the buyer actually experiences. Given that the motor is the heart of the system, any early failure means downtime and potentially costly repairs. If you're the type who can't afford to be without a collector for a week while a part is shipped, you might want to look at brands with longer warranty periods or more robust user forums where troubleshooting tips are readily shared. So, who should still consider the Laguna Flux 2? If you're a serious hobbyist with an existing 220V, 20-amp circuit, and you primarily work with tools that have short, 4-inch dust ports, this could be a decent middle ground between a cheap 1HP unit and an industrial-grade collector that costs 3 times as much. The remote control is genuinely helpful for occasional sanding jobs where you don't want to crawl under the machine. And if you're okay with adding a small sound dampening enclosure yourself,